In 1935, the GPO gave the film unit its first significant commission. It would be a celebration of the postal special that delivered mail along the railway line between London and Glasgow. The film was called Night Mail. Released in 1936, it's a landmark in the history of the documentary.
This is the night mail crossing the border, bringing the check and the postal order, letters for the rich, letters for the poor, the shop at the corner of the girl next door, pulling up beat took a steady climb, the gradient's against her, but she's on time.
Night Mail's splendid soundtrack, which still enthralls today, was mostly the work of two recent recruits to the GPO film unit. The poem was written by a scruffy assistant director called W.H. Auden and set to music by the film unit's in-house composer, Benjamin Britten. These two titans of 20th century art left the GPO soon after Night Mail. But thanks to their contribution, it's now one of the best-known works of the film unit.
Past cotton grass and moorland boulder, shoveling white steam over her shoulder, snorting noisily as she passes, silent miles of wind-bent grasses. Birds turn their heads as she approaches, stare from the bushes at her blank-faced coaches. Sheepdogs cannot turn her course, they slumber on with paws across. In the farm she passes, no one wakes, but a jug in a bedroom gently shakes.
Night Mail also throbs with the social purpose of the movement. The railways were the information superhighways of Britain in the 30s. In Night Mail, the documentarist portrayed the hard-working posties as the men who operated Britain's high-tech communications network. It was directed by Harry Watt. He was an ambitious young filmmaker.
Is this the mail train, mate?
It is, yes.
Are you from Glasgow?
In 1983, the BBC invited Watt and cameraman Chick Fowle on a train journey along the route north.
You must remember in the GPO film unit, as you know, we weren't long-haired people going around saying, oh, I think I might make a film about something. We were taken into Grierson's office and stood at attention, and he called you what? He didn't call you Harry. He said, what? You're going to make a film about train? And you said, yes, Mr. Grierson.
That's right.
Isn't that right?
Exactly right.
You see?
All right now? No. You want 2 bridges and 45 beats.
Night Mail has a gripping sense of being there as the action takes place on the postal special.
1, 2.
Night Mail's realism was an extraordinary achievement. In the 1930s, to film a scene like this aboard a fast-moving train required ingenuity and nerve.
Your legs, and I was more frightened than you were.
I'm not scared at all.
You weren't scared. No, because you were doing a job.
That's right.
Yes, but you were right out to your waist. Stick the camera out a little.
Now.
If that part came through, I was lost. That's the end of that.
Watt threw everything at Night Mail. And this film is not always quite what it seems. For months before shooting began, one of Watt's colleagues, Basil Wright, had travelled up and down on the postal special, making detailed notes, as he later explained.
I don't know how many times I went up and down that train. You know, it became my second home.
From the scraps of dialogue that he'd noted down, Wright wrote a script.
The whole object of the operation was that I should be there and make sure that anything which was said by the workers on the travelling post office was accurate and wasn't messed about with.
The central scene of Night Mail inside the travelling sorting office was entirely scripted.
Bill, first division, coming over. Undergoing, Bill. Harry, second division.
It wasn't even shot on board the train, but in a studio in South London, where there was room to park the GPO's sound recording apparatus, which filled a large truck. Inside the studio was a set that replicated the interior of the postal special.
This is exactly the same floor, the real old floor that we built our sets on. It's quite extraordinary. You can see the marks where the holes in the floor where the sets were built.
The sorting office set was staffed with real posties. They performed the script written from their own words.
Anybody know Dale Garrett? What? Dale Garrett. Not on this division.
Thanks to their inventiveness, the GPO film unit had taken the documentary into rich new territory. Up till now, ordinary life had only been seen. Now it could be heard too.
Well, what's the trouble? Badly addressed. Harold Garrick. Flowers. Thanks.
Night Mail was put on general release in 1936. One critic called it
more exciting than any confected drama.
It was shown in over 600 cinemas across Britain. This was excellent PR for the GPO. But the documentarists had the last word. The film ends with a powerful reminder of the critical role of the postman in British lives. It was written by Auden and voiced by Grierson himself.
Asleep in working Glasgow, asleep in well-set Edinburgh, asleep in granite Aberdeen. They continue their dreams. But shall wake soon and long for letters, and none will hear the postman's knock without a quickening of the heart, for who can bear to feel himself forgotten?
After Night Mail, John Grierson was at the peak of his powers as leader of the documentary movement. But some of his behaviour was considered inappropriate for a civil servant. It had come to the notice of the government that Grierson had been hiring out the film unit to organisations outside the GPO, such as the Ceylon Tea Propaganda Board, Shell and the BBC. There's no evidence that Grierson was using the film unit for personal profit. He regarded non-GPO documentaries as further opportunities to spread the message of the movement.
The 7.5-hour shift begins. The miner works in a cramped position. Often he has scarcely room to swing his pick.
Coalface of 1935 was a promotional film for the British coal industry. It reveals how the country's comforts relied on the back-breaking toil of miners.
Works along the sea, hewing out the coal. His average output is 2,200 weights per shift.
At meetings with senior civil servants, Grierson had his knuckles rapped for operating outside his remit. Grierson argued that his film unit earned extra income for the GPO, but he was politely informed that it was absolutely taboo for a government department to hire itself out like a private company. In 1937, the slow wheels of the state finally rolled over Grierson. An influential civil servant wrote,
"The post office unit has given an incredible amount of trouble."
Grierson was moved away from his post as head of the GPO film unit. He promptly resigned from the civil service.